everyone. I'm Jana Tahage, and welcome to the first episode of Archers for UNICEF Advocacy Series, E-KwentuhAUn Session. Together with our partner, E-KwentuhPH, let us learn more about environmental conservation and how the children can be involved in this cause. And for this episode, we have Mr. Elmeer Meeynard Calimpos, Executive Director and co-founder of Children Optimization for the Revitalization of Environment, or CORE. Hello, Mr. Elmeer. How are you po? It's so nice to see you again.
Hello, Jana. Thank you very much. From DLSU, thank you very much for having me. I'm doing great. I hope you are also doing great.
Yes, sir. I'm doing great. And once again, we would like to thank you very much for joining us on this episode. So, I would like to start by asking you, sir, what ignited your passion for environmental causes or environmental conservation? Was there an inspiration behind this advocacy, or can you just tell us how it all started?
Yeah, definitely, absolutely, sure. First and foremost, thank you for having me in this interview. I'm so much honored. So my name is Elmeer. I am basically the executive director and the founder of Children Optimization for the Revitalization of the Environment, or CORE. It is a non-government organization with a heart for building communities of environmentally conscious children in action. So I graduated my BS Mass Communication last 2018 at University of Negros Occidental Recoletos. And right now, I am pursuing my master's degree in social work. I am a graduating student. And right now, I am presently affiliated as a community development worker at University Community Development Office of the same university. So asking about who inspired me or what transpired during the earlier days, I was a late bloomer, Jana. And in 2016, just like you and other young leaders joining college organizations, I was involved with the Student Catholic Action of the Philippines, our college chapter. And the time, I attended the first Earth Keepers Summit. It was held at Panglao, Bohol. And when I was there, actually that was the commencement of my environmental journey. And when I was standing at the shoreline, I was closing my eyes. And then when I closed my eyes, I told myself that when I go back in Negros Occidental, in Bacolod City, I wanna really create the change that I want to see for my province or for my city. So aside from that, when we went back in Bacolod City, that time after attending the summit, we were able to organize a forum, and we gathered student leaders in Bacolod City. And aside from that, I was able to invigorate and revitalize a dead environmental organization in the university. So the name of the organization was Society of Environmental Enthusiasts for the Development. So all in all, it all started when I was a student leader, and I think a lot of young professionals in the field can relate to.
Oh my God, sir, you're such a big time. Like, you're really cool. You have so much rockets in there. And I know that we're just at the start of this talk, but it's really inspiring of you. And I'm pretty sure that our audience admires that. You're such a great example to everyone, and I would love to push myself more in taking steps in terms of environmental conservation. And environmental conservation is a topic that's been being discussed for years. But what really does it mean?
Yeah. 7 years ago or 6 years ago, it's been a while that I have been doing this. But Jana, for me, environmental conservation should always be acknowledged as a human rights concern. We have been involved. I think a lot of youth who are listening right now, who are watching right now, are aware about the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change. And according to Climate NASA, 90 to 97% is a result of anthropogenic action. That means that humans are causing global warming and climate crisis, and going into our local policies and our mother laws here in the Philippines. We have this Article 2, Section 16, that says the state shall protect and advance the right of the people to live in a healthful and balanced ecology in accord with the rhythm and harmony of the nature. So that's the number one point that I would like to emphasize. Number two, environmental protection and environmental conservation as well should be integrated in the basic curriculum, specifically on basic education to higher education institution, because that's where we all started as a student leader. So that means that if we are students, we have the right and we have the responsibility, we have the moral obligation to learn about the current state of our climate. And having that said, if it is a human rights, or if it is a possible subject in the basic education or higher education institution, I think our government should look into capacitating and empowering our people from the grassroots. Because, Jana, there are lots of protests, internationally and nationally. But when we say climate action and environmental protection, we are talking about the most affected members of our society, specifically the sector of farmers, agriculture, fisher folks, etc., etc. So for me, after all, environmental conservation and protection is a lifestyle. It is a moral obligation and a human rights concern.
Wow, we're just at the start of this talk, but I'm learning so much already. And thank you so much for Dr. Elmeer that gives us a better background in environmental conservation. So moving on to the next question. What can you say about the efforts and initiatives in our country in terms of protecting the environment?
Oh, that's a very controversial issue as of the moment. Exactly, because it's election season, and we just finished the election season, and we have to choose the right leader to really protect our country from environmental destruction. But Jana, based on my experience and professional judgment, I think if I'm going to assess the level of participation and extent of implementation of environmental laws in the Philippines, I will give, I think the government, that's my personal assessment, it's gonna be 5/10. That's really a kind assessment. Number one reason is that in Negros Occidental, we have our 2 natural parks or protected area. So we all know that we need 40 to 50% of forest cover to be protected from any calamities, disasters, etc., etc. And we have this National Integrated Protected Area Systems of 2018, or the NIPAS law. And what is happening right now is there is a weak implementation when it comes to forest management. That's number one. Number two is our solid waste management here in the Philippines. So we keep on creating laws and policies, another laws and policies, but we can't be able to fix or to manage the solid waste management as the primary policy for plastic pollution or plastic management. So that's number two. And number three is the fossil fuel industry in the Philippines. A lot of fossil fuel or the dirty energy have been introduced in different parts of our country. So specifically here in Negros Occidental, there are fossil fuel-based sources of energy that were introduced, but it did not win because of the fights of the young people here in Negros Occidental. So I hope that our government should do a little bit more about this.
That's such a real doctor, and I couldn't agree more. So with that, what do you think is the main problem that we should solve together?
I think, Jana, our hope is our electorate. Our electorate system here in the Philippines can't be amended as soon as possible because it's a political issue. But what I mean when we say electorate, the people who are voting for the right leader who will protect our country from abuses, from quick fixes, right? So as a democratic country, Jana, I definitely believe that we should choose national and local leaders who can draw the line between the economy and our planet, right? So when we have these national leaders who have good track records, who are protecting the environment, who have policies, rules, and regulations on the protection of our planet, local ordinances, then having that said, we will have more policies. We can be able to strengthen our local ordinances and activate our enabling policies because, Jana, we have a lot of environmental policies already in the Philippines, but the problem is implementation. But if our people, because your question is how can we collectively solve this problem. So in order for us to collectively solve this problem, the people should really understand and should really choose the right leader who will protect, who can create policies that will protect our natural resources.
I super agree, sir. And it's really essential to vote for deserving ones because it's our future that at stake here. And can I just also say that environmental conservation really takes numerous forms and serves as a reminder to be careful of our daily choices. So no matter how hectic your life is, chaotic and whatever, it is still relatively simple to make minor but important changes for the betterment of this earth. And I also believe that
exactly.
We could make significant progress if we put into making more moves. This can be done by simply paying closer attention to what we buy and not wasting resources. So everyone, let's keep that in mind, especially in everything that is going on these days. And moving on, what is the relevance of involving the children in environmental protection, and how do you think we can inspire them to be part of the solution, sir?
That's a great question. And going back to your premise, we don't need a handful of, for example, we're talking about zero waste. We don't need a handful of zero waste advocates doing things perfectly. We need millions of them doing things imperfectly. And that I really agree with your with your thought that even just a small thing, it contributes a lot in our environmental progress, right? So regarding your question about the importance of children, their involvement in decision making as well, or in our environmental platforms and projects, it is better to build up a child than it is to repair a broken adult. That's the tagline, or that's the motto of the organization that we have, the core. And as a future registered social worker, because we were studying personality theories of development, I always believe in the theory of Albert Bandura, the social learning theory. According to Albert Bandura, he suggested that modeling plays an important role on how and why people learn in the society. And if we start young, right, we can really inspire our children to do the same, just like what we are doing right now. And if we let these children see what is good, then they will believe in us. Every child, according to one of my favorite authors, every child, Jana, deserves a champion. They need an adult who will not give up on them, and that will believe in their dreams as well. And that we should believe that they can do something, and we should not degrade them. We should not discriminate them. So in my 4 years as an executive director of the organization, I definitely believe that there is a good effect out of our projects that we are implementing in the organization through telling stories, through believing in them, educational materials that we are translating so that they can really understand. Then we have been able to achieve, and we have been able to increase their knowledge and skills and abilities when it comes to social responsibility and environmental sustainability.
Love that. Children deserve a champion. And I also love the tagline, sir. And can I just say that children are really powerful, and they could be involved in so many ways. And I love how we are having this discussion, sir, and your insightful take on this matter. And I'm pretty sure that this gives children better ideas of, baby steps on how they could contribute to this matter, and the parents as well on how to help their children be more aware of environmental conservation. Thank you so much. And so for my next question, environmental protection and climate change awareness are somewhat very technical, especially for the ears of the children. So what strategy should we use in communicating these issues to the children?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because that's really our primary concern when we were just starting to implement our project, because the name of our project is Ecological Saturdays Initiative. So every Saturday, we go to the community, and then we are educating the children. We have with us our modules, and then our educational materials and all other props, so that we can implement, and it would create an impact and effect in the lives of the children. So we have three strategies or techniques, Jana, that we are using in order to effectively deliver our climate education with the children, because the school setup or the academic setup will never talk about serious things about climate change, because it's more on science. It's more on the technical part of science. But we have three. Number one is education. Number two is experiential learning, and number three is exposure. Just a quick review. Education, when we say education, we are creating modules. And because there are lots of technical terms in science that can't easily be taught to the children, then we are translating it from English to local language, or to our dialect, to Hiligaynon, so that the children will really clearly understand about the concepts, the basic concepts of environmental sustainability, carbon oxygen cycle, water sustainability, etc., etc. And number two is experiential learning. So when we say experiential learning, we are really involving the children in terms of recycling, in terms of cleanup drives, in terms of upcycling, and all other activities, so that it will not just go around the discussion or the modules that we are providing to them, but they will also be involved in action-oriented activities. And number three is exposure. So as much as possible, we are really bringing these children in different sites. Like, for example, bringing them in a mangrove areas or in tree planting sites, so that they will really feel and they will really embrace the beauty of the nature. So these three methods or strategies were able to be very, very effective in terms of creating changes in the lives of the children, and it enhanced their knowledge, their skills, and their attitudes.
Right, sir. Those are really great methods and suggestions, and I hope everyone listens carefully to what Sir Elmeer said, so we could apply it right away to the lovely kids around us, so they would have a better understanding of what really environmental conservation is and how they could contribute about it. So, why is it that people do not recognize the urgency to act on climate change? I have the same question.
Yeah. I have two level of answering that question. Number one is, I think, the ruling of the administration. Just imagine when the previous administration or the present administration, when there was a Pulse Asia survey about the ranking of the different social issues that we are having in the Philippines, actually environmental concerns, disasters, and climate change was actually ranked 12 out of 16. It was not even listed in the top 10 urgent or important social issues in our country. Number one is, it's because of the ruling administration. So if it's not really the priority of the administration, because there are lots of concerns in the Philippines in the first place, like, for example, curbing criminality, eradicating poverty, health crisis, this global pandemic that we are experiencing right now. So if it's not being mainstreamed in our government, and there are lesser projects and programs than what we are expecting, then it will not really be mainstream and people will not be aware about it. And secondly is that the media platforms or the media organizations, if there's no fatalities or if there's no death tolls among the stories, like, for example, typhoon or super typhoon, just like what happened here in the Visayas region, just last December 2021, when typhoon or super typhoon Odette passed by our province. So it was really saddening, because if it's not because of death toll or fatalities, then these issues will not be mainstream, like climate change issues. Let us always remember that there will always be a relationship between climate change and disasters. And I think that the government has a huge role in order for this concern or issue na mainstream po siya sa ating society.
Oh my God, sir, that's just really quite alarming, and I totally agree with everything that you said. I actually have the same sentiments in my mind. So, for this last question, as we head on the end of the episode, we would like you to address on how can we, as adults, set a good example for the young ones in protecting environment.
All right. So actually, I really want to be inclusive. The solutions that I have in mind is not just for the young people, but of course, it is also for the different ages and the different walks of life. Whatever you have right now, whatever your profession is, whatever your stand, your economic status, your religious beliefs, we are one in this because it is our moral obligation. Going back to your first question earlier, environmental protection and conservation is a moral obligation and it is human rights. Therefore, we are all interconnected. I think the number one thing that we can do is to stop. I mean, we should limit our motherhood statements. Instead, we should act really concretely about the different issues when it comes to environment. No to double talks or no to vague statements, but instead we should really act out like we are in a fire, like we are experiencing climate crisis. We shouldn't wait for 2050 or 2060 or 2100 or the next generation. And that's really dangerous for our present generation and for our future generation. Number two is no to quick fixes. I believe, Jana, that if the government and the businesses and the politicians should involve our marginalized sectors in the different projects that we have here in the Philippines. Like take for example, there are mining, there are quarrying, and all other concerns that involve the local communities. And I believe that they should be informed, that they should be aware about this project. And last but not the least, as an adult, I am really calling all the adults and young people to enhance and to strengthen our environmental education. Just like what we are doing in core, even though there's no law or present law that integrates the climate education in the curriculum, we are doing this in the community, and we believe that we can really change and enhance one children, one barangay at a time.
I love that. And can I just also say that we could also start this by simply having a meaningful conversation about values with friends or within the organization we are involved in. And we must be willing to be open about the principles that guide our actions. Because if we choose to improve our lives in the present at the expense of future generations' quality of life, we are making a value choice that we rarely make clearly. So yeah, like we should be really good as example to the kids, because it's not just our future at stake here, but also theirs. Before we wrap up, sir, is there anything that you want to say to our audience, Papa?
Yeah, first and foremost, again, I would like to thank you guys, Jana, and the team for inviting me in this amazing talk about the climate change and the present current state of our climate. There's a lot of things that I want to say, but we don't have the luxury of time. But if you're listening right now, to our audience, to our viewers, please continue to create meaningful environmental activities in your school. I know that the activities right now are limited to schools or virtual activities, but involved in NGOs, involved or volunteer in different organizations outside of your school. From there, you will be able to experience a lot of things in the community. Please immerse yourselves in the community. By immersing yourselves in the community, that's where you can really feel the real essence of, environmental activism. And lastly, the world will not be destroyed by those who do evil, but by those who just watch them without doing anything. So keep going. Padayon, iniligay na. Thank you.
I love that, sir. And that wraps up our first episode. Thank you so much, Sir Elmeer. Kudos to you. You are such an amazing example. We definitely learned so many things in this session because of you. And I would love to know more about this matter after this session. And again, thank you so much for your time and being here. The whole organization, DLSU Archers for UNICEF, is grateful for having you here as our speaker. And of course, our partner org, E-KwentuhPH, for being involved as well in this episode. Also, thank you everyone for watching, and we really hope this will encourage you to take environmental conservation more seriously, how children could be involved, and do baby steps for better changes. Again, I'm Jana Takage, and your speaker, Mr. Elmeer Calimpos, and I'm Jana Takage, your host for this episode from DLSU AU, always for the children.
September is the month of the year that Egret Bao is always dreaming of. It is time for their flock to move out due to the winter coming in. Although winter is not good news for their species and every other bird, mainly due to the lack of food to eat. Bao is excited about migrating south for one reason. Bao, why are you smiling? Aren't you bothered that winter is here? May asked. I'm happy that I'll be able to visit Manila Bay once again, May. It is my most desired place amongst all that we visited, Bao happily responded. Even May was convinced that Manila Bay was such a beauty. I have to agree. The sunset there is so serene and captivating. Plus, there are plenty of fish to eat. Before reaching the Philippines, Bao and his flock had to stop over at the mudflat to eat. They searched for small fish, shrimp, small crabs, and even insects to eat. Among all of these, Bao and May's favorite are small fish because of their rich and delicate flavor. May hungrily searched for the mudflats for small fish during her break. Hey, take it easy, Bao gently reminded May. Sorry, Bao. You know, fish are my favorite. Quack, May shyly answered. While the flock of egrets were searching for food nearby, something happened that shocked all of the egrets around them, including Bao and May. Ugh! Someone, help! An egret shouted in panic. Who's that? Bao asked, with no idea what was happening. Come on, let's look, May proposed as they immediately flew towards the commotion to get a better grasp of the scenario. Once Bao and May reached the shouting egret, they were petrified of what they witnessed. An egret struggling to remove a surgical face mask from his beak. All the other egrets were also terrified of what they witnessed. This can't be happening, Mao muttered. The next day, their flock fled to continue moving south. They went to South Korea, Japan, the Ryukyu Islands, and Taiwan. It took them a month to reach the Philippines. Finally, their group reached the long-sought Manila Bay. Bao and May were relieved to see the destination from afar after a month of flying away from the cold. Look, Bao! There it is! That is Manila Bay! Time to eat delicious fish! May cheerfully shouted. Wait. Hold on. Something's wrong, Bao answered in confusion. While flying over the coast of Manila Bay, Bao noticed a great change in the place. It's not the usual bay as before. The water was filled with floating disposable surgical masks, bubble wrap caused by rampant and irresponsible online shopping, and improper disposal of used face shields. It became extremely difficult for the egrets to search for food. What happened to the bay? May asked in sadness. Bao answered in disappointment. I never thought that the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on the environment would be like this. While Bao and May were flying to assess the situation, they saw a fisherman rowing a boat towards the coast with a young girl. The young girl's name is Luningning. Quickly noticed the egrets flying around. Papa, look! There's a flock of egrets over there. Cool! Luningning shouted as she pointed fingers towards the bird. Yeah, I hope they don't mistake the floating face mask for food. Because of the situation, even we are struggling to look for food, her father mentioned. Bao and May overheard the conversation between Luningning and her father. As egrets who also come to the bay to look for food, they sympathize with their problem. As soon as the boat reached the coast, Bao and May waited for the perfect opportunity to talk with Luningning. They waited for her father to walk away before they called the attention of Luningning. Hey kid, what happened here? Bao shouted at Luningning. Huh? Luningning was shocked to hear a voice. What's that? Relax, it's just us, the egrets. May calmly approached Luningning. So it seems you can hear us. Egrets? Really? You can talk? That's amazing. What do you want? The Ning Ning questioned the egrets. We need to know what happened here, Bao firmly responded. At first, Lu Ning Ning hesitated to talk to the two egrets, but eventually she believed that what was happening was real, and she narrated to the birds the situation, and in the situation, the bay got worse. They say it's our fault. We humans caused the pandemic by not respecting wildlife and Mother Nature, Lu Ning Ning narrated. Aren't you supposed to properly dispose of these COVID-19 waste? Bao asked. Yes, that's the plan, but there are too many single-use face masks being thrown away every day. Imagine how big our population is. Multiply it by one face mask every day, Lu Ning Ning justified. Then add millions of sachet and plastic bags being used daily too? While Lu Ning Ning was explaining, May noticed how sad Bao became looking at his fellow egrets, struggling to find food. Lu Ning Ning also stopped explaining to look at the saddened bird. He was looking forward to the visit. It shocked him to see the bay like this, May explained. I know. I also miss him myself. Even my friends. How can we fix this? Lu Ning Ning courageously inquired. I have an idea, Lu Ning Ning shouted in excitement. Bao, May, and Lu Ning Ning gathered all the kids around the bay for a meeting. It seemed that all the other kids could also hear the voices of the egrets. Lu Ning Ning convinced her friends that they had a plan to bring the bay to its former state. Gather around, kids. I know all of you wish for a clean environment, not a bay full of floating trash like this, Bao narrated with conviction. We can fix this if we can convince our family to take action. We can inspire change. That is correct. For the past few months, we have been passive about problems because we are kids, until the situation got worse and worse. It's time to wake up and use our voices. Let's talk to our families, Lu Ning Ning urged her fellow friends. Bao, May, and Lu Ning Ning dismissed all the children. The next day, the parents of the children of Manila Bay met with Lu Ning Ning's father. The kids are very persistent. They want us to clean our mess and be mindful of our trash. They even told us that you can talk. Lu Ning Ning's father happily approached Bao and May. The parents, together with the migratory egrets, carefully cleaned the bay together. Every day, they carefully picked out what they could from the sea, including the trash generated during the pandemic. After days of persistent work, they successfully cleaned the bay. Woohoo! We can eat now with no worry, May happily told Bao. Yes, thank you, Lu Ning Ning, and to your friends, Bao said with a grateful smile. After the incident, the local governments along Manila Bay enforced proper waste segregation and disposable of COVID-19 waste. Then they regulated businesses to reduce plastic production and consider reusable alternatives. While the other egrets are busy eating around the bay, Bao, May, and their parents enjoy the stunning sunset over Manila Bay, which now reflects the pure, pollution-free water. The end.